Hi, this is Paul J. Leslie on Expanding Perceptions.
Hello, good morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. You are listening to the Bringing Inspiration to Earth show.
Today, I'm so happy to be talking to a remarkable gentleman, Tim Walter.
Tim Walter.
Tim Walter. I feel like I need applause or something. So glad to have you on my show.
Being on camera really is not my comfortable place, but that's one of the big things that's changed since I started dowsing. Hello there, my name's Tim Walter. I'm a house healer and an alternative life coach. I've been doing a few interviews recently, and I wanted to share with you some of the fundamental questions that I've been asked, such as, what is a house healer? So, along the way, in these few clips, you might also start to see how learning to douse is really a way of opening up the potential of your own reality too. So for more on all of these aspects of where dowsing could take you, do head over to the individual channels of these lovely people that I've been talking to. Details of where to find them are in the text below. Before we talk about the meaning of life though through dowsing, don't also forget to keep your eyes open for our next monthly live Q&A here on this channel, and we'll be coming to that soon. So do drop any questions that you have about dowsing and the spirit realms and the subtle realms in the comments below. New to the channel as well is, please do consider supporting the work that we do here for £4.99 a month. If you click on the join button, you'll be helping hugely to grow this as an online community, building on dowsing and helping you connect more deeply to your intuitive links, to the very real personalities that are there to help guide all of us from their position in the subtle energies on the edge of our conscious awareness. So these are personalities that include the spirit of place and more. Let's reconnect with who we really are and learn to be wise in our choices. So here now though is Loretta Brown. She's great. I do recommend popping over and having a look at what she's doing on her channel. She asks, what is a house healer?
Tim, I want to bring all of this down into a little bit more practicality for the listening audience. So could you please talk a little bit about all of a sudden I'm like, which question do I want to ask? Talk a little bit about dowsing and the work that you actually do with houses, because I'm thinking while people are listening, some people are probably saying, gee, do I have a ghost in my house? And or why is there an area of my house or something going on? And I know I'm saying a lot here, and I know you'll jump in, but I actually have a client who a few years back I was working with, who kept coming in talking about this area in her home that she just, when she goes into that area, it's not good. Okay.
So. Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite common. That you can find an area in a home that is just that one little area that somebody is like, oh no, really don't like that, or it's just a corner of a room. Sometimes it's like, oh no, I just want to put a chair in that corner. There are so many aspects to the subtle energies that do actually impinge on our subconscious, and if you're not kind of sensitive in the way that you are, then people will just kind of like, well, I don't really like that, but I don't know why I don't like that, or whatever. But the thing is that there's a geopathic stress is something that is a label, right, that is applied to aspects of a person's house that are creating detrimental influences on that person. So geopathic stress can be earth energy, ley lines, spirits, any of these sort of things. Technopathic stress even, can, as far as I'm concerned, can come under the whole label of geopathic stress. Right. So the thing is that, if you talk to a real estate agent, then they'll talk about the buyer just instinctively knows when they walk into a new property whether it's the right house for them. What's going on there? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about, because it's an innate subconscious reaction to the energy of the house. So the wow factor when somebody walks into a new house is and they say, well, this is the one for us. This is lovely. I can see us living here and raising a family. That is really due to the energy, the feeling of the place. Now, in the house healing that we do, we use a list of some 50 section headings. That's 50 section headings that we actually ask with dowsing. We ask the management upstairs, or we ask our guides about, is this facet, section 1, let's call it spirits, trapped souls, is this adversely affecting the occupant? And then you get a response, you get a yes or no response. And if you're mediumistically inclined, then you kind of have a conversation with your guide while you're doing that. So in that sense, then the dowsing becomes just a key to access your own intuitive abilities. So, but we go through 50 or so of these section headings, which, as I say, includes things like underground water flows, ley lines, earth energy lines, toxic lines, technopathic stress, all the electrical interference from things, psychic attacks, psychic cords, ancestor issues, karma, all of this sort of stuff. People can be subjected to all sorts of things. If we think about the house and the place, and like your example of a room that is not great, then most commonly it's underground water, earth energy, toxic lines, or another kind of energy flow as a line kind of manifested through. So earth energy lines, people will have heard of ley lines, and ley lines are usually straight alignments that can be plotted on a landscape. And the best thing with ley lines is to actually look at a map and then plot them on the map, and you can see where they flow, right? Earth energy lines are slightly different because they weave like a river across the landscape. And earth energy is the really, really important stuff, because earth energy is the mechanism that carries the information of us away to wherever it is processed at whatever depth of resonance, and therefore the reality created back to us, right? So earth energy is integral to that process that we've been talking about in the first half. But on a practical level, anybody can pick up a little an old coat hanger, bend it into an L rod, and literally ask a question. Just simply, very first question that I get people to ask: am I standing up? Right? You hold the L rod. Am I standing up? And it will say no. Right? Okay, fine. So you're then dowsing. You are dowsing. Now you can do it with a pendulum. Douse with a pendulum, or a wedding ring on a bit of thread. So the basic interaction with dowsing is very straightforward, and the idea is that you ask a question and you get a yes or no response. But then when you get more practiced at it, that opens up and the individual develops a different way of interacting with it. But simply, people at home, if they have a room that they feel uncomfortable about, they can literally bend a coat hanger, go in there and ask, and it's very safe. Just simply ask the universe, is there an earth energy line in this room that I am out of sync with, for example? That sort of thing.
Now, as you were making this transition, after you've had these experiences that are totally new to you in your life at the house, did you have any sense as things were kind of opening your perceptions that you were actually on a mission that has kind of been laid out for you, or do you feel like this is just happenstance?
That's a really nice question. Really good question. One of the things I will point out is that change, that whole arc of the development from corporate stress to not corporate stress of a different level, it took a long time. Okay, so the decision to move was an easy one because we were both feeling the pressure of the southeast. That's great. I will answer your question in a sec. That was an easy one. The revelation of the ghost being present, and her name was Jane, and she stayed in the house. We were with her for more or less for 15 years. We lived in that house 15 years. Yeah, it was 15 years. So there was 15 years of development and change in that process. And actually, you've put your finger on the button in terms of financial material world, because actually what happened was that the more I got involved and fascinated by let's call it the spiritual world, then the less I was interested in making the corporate programs. And what happened was I ended up doing more conferences, and that was a very different sort of beast, but even more stress. But I went from that because, do you know what's really interesting? Was there a hand of another force involved, which is the essence of your question? And this is an example of, well, have a think about this. I was doing the conferences for Sun Life of Canada. Sun Life of Canada was 80% of my income. I was earning a very pleasant amount of money, thank you very much, and was traveling the world doing these conferences. We were also starting to do a little in-house radio show. So there was a regular thing that wanted to get produced. There was a lot of work to be got through. But what this meant was that as a self-employed individual, one is always aware that cash flow is king. You need to be, you want to ride the peaks and troughs of cash flow. People that are employed, they kind of don't understand that. They don't get that, how important that is. So I'd got to a stage, because we had such a turnover of work at Sun Life of Canada, that I actually could lay out my year, and there it was. There's my cash flow. I can see it. This is the holy grail. I sat there one night at my desk working late, lights low, and thought, yeah, I've done it. The very next day, Sun Life of Canada announced that they were closing business in the UK.
Wow.
Completely. There had been not a word of it. It was announced like a bolt out of the blue. So influence from other sources, yeah, because that meant that my income went from as near as a lot. It went down by, well, I mean, you can imagine. I mean, it just disappeared overnight. So what it did was it meant that I had to find other clients. It meant that I had more free time. It meant that I could actually spend time. And I did 3 little video programs for a guy called Hamish Miller. Now, Hamish Miller was a dowser, an author, a metal worker, a spiritual mentor for many, many people. And he became a really good friend of mine for the last 7 years of his life. He wrote a book with Paul Broadhurst called The Sun and the Serpent, which is the telling of the story of discovering the ley line, earth energy lines across the south of England. Sorry, not southeast. They actually go from Cornwall across to Suffolk. There are a couple of energy lines that follow a very major alignment, goes through Avebury, Henge. A remarkable man. And if I had continued my corporate standard work as it was and as it was developing, I wouldn't have had the time to spend with Hamish. And I learned so much from just being with him about dowsing and about the subtle realms. And Hamish was the one that introduced me to the idea that through focused intent, the individual can influence a space. Now, when I say the individual, I don't mean the individual human being. I actually mean the creative forces that work through us and of which we are a part can influence a space for the benefit of that space. Because Hamish had been involved with an organization called Fountain International. Still exists, it still runs today. It was set up by a chap called Colin Bloy in the late 70s, I think. And it was all about gathering together as a group, focusing love into the center, the hara of a town that was troubled and affecting the vibration, the energy frequency of that town. So they did work on Brighton. And if you Google Fountain International, Brighton, Hamish Miller, Colin Bloy, you'll find reams of information about this sort of stuff. So he introduced me to the idea that actually we can affect our surroundings through that. And gently over the years, over part of this change, what's happened is that I met other people, obviously, and have refined that process to a certain extent. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing the house healing.
So how would someone know or recognize that they are living with geopathic stress?
Well, the biggest telltale really is that it's very straightforward, is that they feel better when they're not at home. You know, I mean, it's as simple as that. You move away, you go on holiday, or you go to visit somebody for a week, and actually you feel better. But, you know, there can be feelings of nausea, there can be headaches, there can be what has become known as brain fog, that feeling of confusion. But it's not just those symptoms. But the primary thing is, I mean, again, you know, I was talking about seeing things earlier on in my own experience, but you can see flashing lights and this sort of things, you know, in your peripheral vision. But you know, there's a whole raft of things that can affect a person. But again, equally, you know, we don't exclude a mainstream kind of attitude. You know, if somebody is seeing flashing lights in their vision, for example, then they need to get their vision checked. And likewise, you know, how much of this is, you know, where is this on the woo-woo scale, shall we say? You know, because that's going to vary from person to person. Quite often, you know, we need to come at it with a bit of a sense of humour, and let's not take ourselves too seriously. We do, you know, in the Knights Rose House Healing Network, we are, you know, we try to, part of the reason why I set the network up was so that we could get some kind of uniformity about the way that we approach people and the way that we help people. Because as you'll recognise, a lot of people are actually very vulnerable when they're being affected by things that they simply don't understand. And, you know, there is a desperate need for some real care and understanding that is based in the mystical tradition. Now, what I mean by that is there's a lot of stuff on the internet these days in particular that really, quite frankly, is going to scare the bejesus out of people. There are some very serious subtle energy effects that can take place for some individuals, some very highly sensitive individuals. And these people can be going through hell. But, you know, and that can make them very vulnerable. So we try to treat them with complete respect and help wherever we can, really. But a lot of the time, is actually helping people just see with a new set of eyes what it is that's affecting them.